Hello, everybody, and welcome to Do Your Research. I'm Michael,
And I'm Carl.
and this is a podcast. I did it again.
What'd you do again?
The same intro as last time.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah,
just
you did.
sounded so good, I just wanted to do it twice.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
seriously, this is a podcast where we take a critical look at pervasive and commonplace conspiracy theories and misinformation roaming around there in the public sphere, zeitgeist, internet, what have you, and
Interwebs.
interwebs, and attempt to analyze them in a critical and feasible fashion. I'm going to get a type 5 down here. One of these days, the podcast is going to have a good introduction for this.
But
But
today is not that day.
no, it is not. And we can't edit audio, so this
No.
stays. Uh, so today, Carl, we're going to talk a little bit about. Well, you already know what we're going to talk about because we discussed this ahead of time. But we're going to talk about microchips, specifically microchips that are injected via vaccination.
Indeed, we are.
Yeah. So I know you've seen a lot of this stuff going around. We're currently in the grips of a pandemic and locking down again for a second time. We will be, in my state, officially locked down at midnight tonight. Bars and restaurants will be closed for takeout only, and indoor seating will now be limited because, quite frankly, Carl, people just couldn't wear masks. And
Yes.
yeah, social distance and not do all the shit that everybody else was depriving themselves of because it's a pandemic.
Yeah. Of course, in my state, we are experiencing similar things, other than the government uh, taking action. So,
Oh, your
uh,
government's not doing anything?
no. My local mayor has issued some restrictions, but what he's able to do is relative.
Wow.
And the governor of the state uh, hasn't done a lot since the original lockdown. We're, I believe, one of, if not the last state to lockdown, and then one of, if not the first states to lift all restrictions. So they were only up for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow. That's yeah, so obviously your state is cares a lot more about freedom than my state does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're very left leaning, so we're very used to tyranny. We love it,
Yes,
actually,
yes.
quite frankly. Yeah.
The tyranny of compassionate government.
Yeah, those bastards. But seriously, I mean, we want our elderly population to not die, or at risk population not to die, and we do a good job over here. And even with as good a job as most people do in our state, we're still spiking up like 1,000 cases a day. You know?
Yeah, it's why measures, I mean, not to soapbox, but like it's why measures are so important because there are so many aspects of this thing that we can't realistically control.
Right.
And so, like, you have to control what you can, especially when it's as small a sacrifice as not gathering in large groups and wearing a mask when you're able. I mean,
Mhm. To be
you know,
fair, I mean, it does suck. I mean, we didn't have a summer this year because of
yeah,
this. And people have had to make sacrifices, but those sacrifices are all for the greater good, so that we don't spike
yeah,
cases, we don't overwhelm our healthcare system, and we get to a point where we have to decide, who gets life-saving medication and who doesn't.
yes, absolutely.
That's a
I mean,
horrible
like, I
place to be.
haven't, won't be seeing my parents and my brother for the first time in my entire life,
Yeah,
because I don't think it's responsible to travel across the country. Won't be coming to see you for
yeah,
the same reason.
I know.
Um,
It's It sucks. But
yeah,
you know what? It's a whole hell of a lot better than having to have only one person in full scrubs to sit next to a loved one who is dying.
yeah,
I just, I that has been the biggest tragedy of all of this. That it makes me mad when I think about all the people who I'm soapboxing, but when all the people who don't care and don't
yeah,
see this as a problem. And And there are people that are saying goodbye. There's kids that are saying goodbye to their grandparents as they're passing away through windows. And they can't
Yeah,
get close to them, and they can't hold their hand, and they can't tell them they love them unless it's over the phone. Like it's awful. It's a
it's
human tragedy.
it's tragic, and then it's the gross negligence on the part of many of our governments and the people
Yeah.
that we vote to help us through this sort of disaster. And then also, of course, the misinformation. Not that this is the misinformation we plan to talk about today,
No.
but the gross misrepresentation of the actual solution. Like you and I are lamenting here people who refuse to make basic sacrifices. Neither of us is talking about people not being able to go to work or go buy food or sacrifice their entire mental well-being if they need to go see somebody.
Hmm.
Just be responsible about it.
Yeah.
My brother went to see my parents a couple times.
Yeah.
He and his significant other had to quarantine for 2 weeks. And I mean real quarantine.
Yeah.
Like the kind that people like Alex Jones pretend the lockdowns, where they didn't see or contact anyone or go to the store for 2 weeks before they went to see my parents. Um,
That's
and
very
they're lucky that
responsible of
they
them.
can do that.
Right. Exactly. And it's because they care.
Yeah. And, I don't even understand that not everyone can do that. Not everyone can work from home and not go to work for 2 weeks.
Right.
And it's especially for those folks that the rest of us need to take the precautions we can so that they can go see their parents and grandparents.
Right. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have signs like that in your neighborhood?
A few.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's
Yeah.
good. Because it's true. Um, I guess we should segue into what we're talking about today, and that
Oh,
is that
yeah.
there are some people, uh, despite all of the evidence, despite pleas from their fellow peers, their government officials, health organizations, the rest of the world, that we take this seriously and take precautions. There is I wanted to say small, but it's actually not that small, subset of people that believe that this is all a conspiracy to control humanity through the use of vaccines and specifically microchips injected via vaccine under the guise that you're going to be protected from the virus, that you are going to get a tracking device that's going to be inserted under your skin and it's going to be used to track your every whereabouts. You heard about this?
A few times.
Yeah, a lot of it centered around Bill Gates, which I don't. This is not going to be a pro Bill Gates podcast. I'll. I think being a billionaire is
Yeah.
just morally
Yeah.
irresponsible. But
Yeah.
um,
Topic for another time.
topic for another time. But yeah, this has been going around, and it's been pervasive enough that even Bill Gates himself has had to come and speak out about, no, I'm not trying to microchip you with vaccines. It sounds ridiculous on its face, but there are a very loud group of people that
Yeah.
believe that this is true.
I think you were correct to characterize it as small. It's statistically small, but there's a lot of people, so it's still
It's
numerous.
not as small as I'd
And
like.
it's small as a portion of the total US population, but
Yeah,
they're numerous, and we need vaccinations are herd immunity. That is the herd immunity that people talk about. Is we
right.
make sure enough people can't get it that it can't spread to the rest.
But you can't
And
have
so,
herd immunity till you have a vaccine.
yeah, so well, or you just let everyone get it and 1% of the population to 4% of the population perish.
Oof.
Um,
Millions,
but
millions of people.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not a small number.
yeah, 1% of 7.8 billion,
Yeah,
seven
yeah,
point six billion, however many.
yeah. So what is that?
Yeah,
That's 7 million people.
no, that would
70
be a
million?
thousandth.
Oh
It's
Jesus, 70 million
over
people.
70 million.
I can
Yeah,
math. It's just a number so large that I'm just like it boggles my mind. 70 million
so
people. I mean,
That's
yeah,
why people like Bill Gates and others have to come out and actually address these things,
yeah,
because we need the vast, vast, vast majority of people to get a safe vaccine when it's available.
yes, agreed. And emphasis on the safe.
Hmm.
Obviously, we can't fast track this more than we already
No.
are. It's got to be safe for
Properly
people.
tested and approved.
Yep, 100%. But you might be maybe not so surprised to know that the idea of being implanted with a chip uh, is not a new conspiracy theory. This is something that's been going around for quite a while, and so a lot of the research that I did this week focused on kind of the history of this conspiracy theory, and some of the underlying things that made it prevalent, and then kind of why it's kind of seen a big resurgence today, especially with like the anti-vax narratives and things that are going around. So, a little bit that I wanted to talk to you about was more the kind of origins of marking and tagging and tracking. Like you can imagine that this is a technique that's been developed by biologists. I think that's
Oh
probably
yeah,
not a surprise,
yeah.
right? To
Yeah,
yeah,
very
personally
publicly known example of tracking.
exactly. And
Yeah.
this is not new. This has been around for at least 100 years, where we've been doing things like color coding leg tags on birds, or dart and anchoring tags on fish in the 70s, or even like scale clipping on snakes, or snake tattooing, which was kind of a fun one that I found for 1956. Even in the 1940s, they used to paint the shells of desert tortoises to identify individuals. And they would do this because obviously these are biologists, they're studying these animals, and they're trying to figure out, information on population densities, on, social, migration patterns and
Yeah.
group sizes, all this stuff that they can tell from, capturing these animals, tagging them in some way that's permanent, that lasts for the lifetime of the animal, and then recapturing him again. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that this actually was because they were doing this kind of technique. They were able to find out that that's one of the reasons why tortoises live so long. They were able to find these tortoises that had their shells notched all the way back in the 1930s, and they found them in the
Oh
in the
wow.
80s, 1987. Um, yeah, so they were able to tell, like, oh wow, actually tortoises really do live this long. Here's one that's still kicking around, that's been that for 50 years. And I'm going to cut a lot of this stuff out because it's dead air. In this part too.
You
Um,
should leave this though.
this part, okay, I'll leave this
Yeah.
part. So after, like, these were pretty rudimentary kind of techniques that they used. In the 80s, they started doing this thing called pit tagging, which is a passive integrated transponder, is what that stands for. And
Okay.
it's electronic microchip that's encased in biocompatible glass. It's usually between 10 and 14 millimeters long and about 2 millimeters in diameter. Uh,
Okay.
and the glass casing around it protects the electronic components inside of it and prevent tissue irritation.
Yes.
Some people may know this, that electronics components, especially back in the 1980s, used a lot of lead, tin and lead
Yeah.
in the soldering. And so, obviously, if you've got tin and lead inside of an organic uh, being, a person or animal, lead does not, we don't react well to lead, living
And
organisms
that's,
don't.
I mean, that's hardly the only thing in even modern, well, not in modern electronics, but that's hardly the only thing in electronics
Mm-hmm.
that is just does not work well with biology.
Exactly. And other, before they started doing these pit tags, all these other, methods of tagging had pretty high rates of failure. Up to about
Okay.
30% of
Yeah.
these tags would fail because the animals change over time. These things aren't as permanent as they you know as they would like them to be. But these pit tags were electronic microchips. They were readable at close range, and they allowed scientists to do the same kind of tagging that they had done always in the past, but now with just a little bit more accuracy and certainty.
Hmm.
So, um, That was the 1980s for that. 1998 was the first silicon chip implanted into a human. This is a doctor that did this on himself, mostly to just
Hmm.
see if it would work. Um,
This one came up in my research as well.
that one did. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
You might be able to talk a little bit more about that one. I kind of threw that on my timeline, but 2004, FDA approves and implanted RFID tags, 16-digit number readable at close range.
which
Uh,
is actually what the guy in 1998 implanted, was just an RFID tag.
yeah, just a small
He
little
used it
thing.
to control light switches.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure we can talk a little bit about what people are actually using these things for, the feasible uses of this, because it is possible, right? We've been doing this for quite a long time, and even, since the 1980s, 1990s, we've been tagging animals, pets, this way to track them in case they get lost, to be able to find them again or identify their owners. This is not a new thing.
No.
So I was wondering, this is not the first time we've heard this conspiracy theory. It has, I think, in the past, really been kind of focused on the theories have centered around like mind control and behavior modification and these different ways that these chips that are implanted, usually in your brain or, I think even Timothy McVeigh said that the CIA had implanted a chip in his buttocks. Like,
Yeah, I was not aware of that, but yeah, the implantation of computer chips, and that is a long time trope, right?
yes.
I mean, it's been in movies and media, and lots of things in movies and media end up or come from the conspiracy sphere. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And so it was really kind of interesting. It was hard for me to kind of nail down where exactly this conspiracy theory came from, the nascent, because it has been so pervasive. I was able to find a really cool article about the KGB spreading conspiracy theories about the U.S. Using mosquitoes in order to infect the Indian population with yellow fever. Um,
Oh,
yeah, which is kind of an interesting one. This was actual KGB misinformation that the CIA was combating in India because they didn't have yellow fever at the time, and the theory that was being spread was that the U.S. had weaponized mosquitoes and was using them to transmit the infection to the population of India, which it's interesting to see that kind of same parallel with that and with Bill Gates and the work that he's done, especially around mosquitoes and malaria specifically, and
yes.
trying to combat that in the third world. Because that's such a
Yeah,
big,
actually.
yeah,
Uh, Either eliminating mosquitoes, which there's some indication that they would not have a collapse effect on anything really, and but also I believe there's been research done in using mosquitoes to help transmit um, immunities.
hmm. Oh,
Uh,
yeah, I'd heard
yeah,
about that. Yeah, they're trying
but
to
I did
weaponize
not
them the
do
other
my
way around.
research on that, so I'm not prepared to discuss it.
No, that's probably best. We should discuss the things that we've done our research on.
Yeah.
But one thing that I did research that was I found very interesting, and this is something that was actually confirmed by the CIA and declassified in 2001, and that was a project in the 1960s by the Central Intelligence Agency Directorate of Science and Technology, and it was called Acoustic Kitty. Have you heard about this?
No.
Mm. So the idea was that they were going to try to use various animals to spy on the Russians. We were in the middle of the Cold War at the time, the 1960s. CIA was really just getting going, and they were stretching
Yeah.
their wings, trying to figure out like how do we do this espionage stuff. Um,
Oh, yeah, and
yeah,
I mean, animals as a delivery system or a weapon is certainly not new, and it's not even new for the U.S. at that point. We used bats to deliver napalm or two.
yeah. So weaponizing animals is not a that there's that's not
I don't
a
know if it was napalm, but incendiary device.
incendiary bats. Yeah, in an attempt to start a firestorm because Japanese houses were predominantly made of wood. Um, anyway, that's another topic for another day. Uh,
Yeah.
but Acoustic Kitty. So this was a project that the CIA ran that was designed to use cats to spy on the Kremlin and Soviet embassies. So a hour-long procedure, a veterinary surgeon implanted a microphone into the cat's ear canal and a small radio transmitter at the base of its skull and a thin wire into its fur. So this was the 1960s, so I can't imagine this technology being very small. Mm,
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't think so.
no.
Let's see.
But the idea was for this cat to innocuously record and transmit sound from its surroundings. Uh, but of course, due to the problems with distraction, the cat's sense of hunger had to be addressed in another operation, uh, and it was a mess. They did awful things to this poor animal. It really it was it's sad to hear. So I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this and you don't like to hear about bad things happening to cats, especially, maybe just like fast forward like 30 seconds. But essentially, the
Maybe
first
we can try and leave a time tag in the description.
we can if anybody's very sensitive. But yeah,
If anybody listens to this.
just fast forward. I mean, it's been more than 30
Yeah.
seconds now, but fast forward like a minute or 30 seconds from now. But a minute back when I said that. Anyway, so the first mission was designed to eavesdrop on two men in a park outside of a Soviet compound in Washington, D.C. The cat was released with all of his cool, awesome super spy cat gear to go and spy on these guys, but allegedly it was almost immediately hit and killed by a taxi cab as it was crossing the street.
All right.
Yeah. So $20 million project immediately just wasted by a New York cabbie, a reckless
All
one
right.
at that. There's no information as to how the cabbie felt about this, but I imagine that New York cabbie in the 1960s probably didn't care very much.
May not have been terribly.
Mm-hmm. But at any rate, the project was canceled in 1967. And
Possibly for the best, though, because I doubt losing the first one made a lot of people really happy about investing more money into animal abuse.
yeah, I imagine the higher ups, I mean, at least any with a
Ah,
conscience might have been a little upset about that, or maybe thought, hey, maybe our money could be spent spying
oh,
in different ways.
oh, yeah. Please don't mistake me for accusing them of having consciences. I was speaking purely from a reluctance to build another one.
That's fair. That's fair. Anyway, poor kitty cat. Very sad, but it is an example of the CIA using, at that time, modern technology to turn a living being into a listening device. And attempts were also made to try and control flies and other animals as well. So, I mean, there is documented record of intelligence agencies trying to use technology to weaponize animals and turn them into listening devices. So it's not a very big step from there to think that, oh, if they're doing it on animals, perhaps they could be doing it on people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not an uncommon conspiracy theory. Some of the people that suffer, I will say suffer because I think maybe getting too far ahead of ourselves, but I do think that a lot of this has to do with mental illness. But a lot of the symptoms of people who believe that they have been injected with a CIA device that's brain controlling them is that they either hearing voices or noises that others cannot hear, gripped with a constant fear of being watched or a feeling of being watched, seeing flashes or visible phenomenon that others can't see, and a belief that their thoughts are not their own. So,
Yep.
does that sound like anything else to you, Carl?
No, I mean, schizophrenia.
Certainly comes to mind.
Potentially dissociative identity disorder. I don't know if I'm getting my terms exactly right, but
That's totally right. We didn't research that part of it, but it does sound like some very similar and very familiar psychiatric disorders.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, but I mean, obviously, especially back in the day, mental health was much more stigmatized than it is today.
yeah.
It still is in a big way, but not nearly so much as it was. So these kind of conspiracy theories, we kind of hit the modern, the zeitgeist into modern pop culture, where the people wearing tinfoil hats, or covering their walls in
Yeah.
tinfoil with the attempt to like block out these radio signals that are speaking to their chips inside their brain that are controlling them and causing them to do things. Um, Now this is a pretty, I would say, an indicator of something else going on here that's not necessarily to do with actually anything nefarious being done by any intelligence agencies, but there are people out there that believe that. In my research, I ran across a group called the International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies, or ICAACT, which is run by two gentlemen named Jesse Beltran and Lars Durgard. Um,
Okay.
and these guys uh, these guys run a website that both of them believe that they have been implanted with mind control chips. Uh, and they have set up this website. It's icaact.org. I'm going to plug it, mostly just because it hasn't been updated since like 2013. It is, oh no, I'm sorry, 2012. It is dead, this website. But actually, not a bad looking website for 2012. If you want to see what 2012 websites used to look like, go check out this one. Um, all sorts of links to audio and broadcasts and radio shows that have been deleted off the internet. Um, but but these guys really have a firm belief that they are victims of what they call domestic terrorism or silent rape, or all of these testimonials from people, and they're gathering these things to get people to come and you know do essentially RF frequency readings on these people inside of Faraday cages, so they can prove that these people are emitting radio or RF radiation that's coming from inside their bodies, that's not being affected by an outside source. And these guys were trying to uh, get money and awareness in order to start a large scale testing to be able to gather evidence and prove this stuff. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and there's a very fun. They had a. I'm gonna go try and find this here. Like, um, oh, man. So you've been, yeah. So you think you've been implanted against your will. There's all these really interesting, you know, ideas. Did you run into a thing called Verichip in any of your research?
No, I did not read about Verichip. I was more researching just like current implantable technology.
Okay, okay. Well, Verichip is one of these devices, basically, that was what was developed back in 2004, when this came out, and it is essentially just an RFID tag. 16-digit code. Uh, Very scary. There's a picture of this on the website that is in Korean. It's in South Korea. It is a service that is translated as Devil Chip Removal Service, RFID, and it's got the number 666 all over this thing. And there's a nice Christian cross and a terrible picture of a person with an injury to their hand that's circular that looks like, oh, there's a chip in there. And it's the mark of the beast, Verichip RFID in the human body.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
all sorts of weird biblical imagery tied in.
exactly. And this
Yeah.
is not. I guess the point I'm making with that is this is not a U.S. Conspiracy. This is everywhere. And even those guys that I
Yeah.
spoke about before, they're mostly touring over in Europe, in Belgium, and in the Netherlands. And you know, this is not a this is not something that is just Americans that believe this stuff. This is a worldwide thing. So
Yeah, yeah, I mean, hearing voices is a s- significant symptom of mental illness. And there have always been throughout history a contingency of people who attribute various causes to that mental illness, whether it be supernatural or in a modern context, some sort of technological and nefarious government reason. I mean, that's yeah, schizophrenia is not a United States phenomenon. So, of course, hearing voices and in a modern context attributing it to chips is a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, exactly. And while we're in the midst of a global pandemic, it's no surprise that this narrative is popping back up again.
Especially with modern anti-vaccination.
Yeah, exactly. And then maybe that's, I mean, that I think that's been studied to death. But honestly, I think more people need to understand just how much bad science is propping up the anti-vax movement, and how, if you understand anything about how medical research should be conducted, and or even just how the scientific method works, you'll understand that, oh, there actually isn't any scientific basis, any, I,
No,
yeah,
but that is a thing we can research and talk about more another time.
yeah, I might be a little bit passionate about that and make every argument.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, but anyway, so here we are today, and we've got this conspiracy going around that Bill Gates specifically is, because he is a billionaire and because he, works in vaccines, his foundation does a lot of work trying to get the third world vaccinated. And he says scary things like depopulation and things that really trigger the kind of conspiracy theorist who believe there's some, global elitist cabal that is trying to either take over the world or, murder
Make the
the
very things
population.
that they warn us about and try to prevent and recommend actions to prevent,
Right.
but they're also trying to make them happen.
Exactly. And with Gates, like, yes, he is talking about population control, but I think it's important to understand that this is in the context of economically disadvantaged countries, people that are growing up in poverty that don't have good access to healthcare and thus have very, very uh, what do you call that? It's a low, not low birth rate, but low survival rate, uh, high infant mortality. That's what I'm
Yeah.
looking for. And
Even higher than the United States.
even higher than the United States, which is it's too high still
Yeah.
already. We don't have good access to healthcare in this country. I'm going to go on another diatribe if I don't stop. Um, but so when he's talking about population control in the context of that discussion, he's talking about the fact that he wants to improve, infant mortality rates so that more children are not dying, and therefore, if people have confidence that they've got good health care, their children are going to live, they're not going to try and hedge their bets by having more and more and more children and putting a strain on the resources of, a country that already doesn't have a lot of resources, or at least the resources aren't evenly distributed. So
Yes.
population control in the sense that we don't want more children to die, and we don't
Yeah.
want to tax an overburdened, government or
Family
system.
planning, not genocide.
Exactly. But some people take that to mean he's looking to commit genocide, and it's just not. If you listen to any of the context, it's just not true. But if you take a soundbite out of context, then yeah, sure, it sounds real scary. Um,
Yeah.
so Bill Gates recently, or the Gates Foundation, I should say, which I've got a lot to talk about with that. That's awful too. But anyway, um, they do some good work, but it also is a way for Bill Gates to not pay taxes. Um,
He is a billionaire.
he is a billionaire. They have all the tax breaks, but some of the good stuff that they're doing is it was some of the stuff that they've proposed. Right? Did you hear about this quantum dots thing?
Yeah, I believe so. That's the tagging to help vaccine records be
Mm-hmm.
carried between health clinics in places with little to no infrastructure to
Exactly.
communicate records.
Yep. You communicate records. These are, little, patterns of invisible dye that can't be seen by the naked eye. They're molecule-sized particles that react to infrared light that
They're
can,
barcodes.
yeah, essentially. And that, of course, does raise privacy concerns, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, it is being proposed for a noble, or noble in quotes, I guess, purpose, for, trying to make healthcare and make NGOs' lives easier that are working in these countries of
But
undervaccinated
it
people.
would mean creating a database of medical records.
And it would mean tagging people by via tattoos, and there's a bad history with that too. I mean, even if you
Yeah.
can't see them,
Yep.
it's still scary. The contextual side of this is that this was not something that the Bill Gates Foundation has initiated. It's not something that anybody has put any money into besides just paying a think tank of smart nerds to go, how could we solve this problem? No bad ideas. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Here is a way we could solve the problem of medical records not being easily accessible in these communities that
Mhm.
are lack healthcare infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Another thing that the Gates Foundation was donating money to was also this research in what's called ID 2020. Have you heard about that?
I don't maybe
Okay,
it sounds familiar, but I couldn't describe it.
it's one of these. This is another part of the conspiracy that's going around. That this is kind of the proof that gets bandied about that. Oh, Bill Gates is in on this. This is something that this is proof that he wants to microchip us, right? ID 2020 is another byproduct of a small nonprofit think tank that's looking to promote the expansion of digital identification. So
Okay.
yeah, the same idea that like there's people in this country, a lot of people, too many people in this country that are homeless or disenfranchised and can't get identification. They either can't pay for it, they can't travel to where it's done, they can't pay to get their birth records, they don't have birth records potentially. Um,
Yeah.
and therefore they're prevented from accessing a lot of services that could help them.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a big problem, right? They're essentially blocked out of the system because they don't have access to identification. So the idea that this think tank came up with, and again, this is an idea, this is not something that anybody's put any money invested into at this point, as far as we know. Um, but they came up with this idea to allow people to store vital documents digitally using blockchain technology. And this is all still just electronic. This has nothing to do with microchips.
No.
This is just a way of maintaining digital records using blockchain. Uh,
Yeah, it's just an encrypted database.
exactly, exactly. So you take those two though in conjunction with each other. That we're trying to ID people, right? We're trying to we're trying to make people be able to have identification, and we're talking about tattooing people with invisible tattoos that mark them. Like if you take those two things in conjunction with each other, it sounds really scary, and you get a lot of these talking points that get kind of bandied about nowadays. Um,
Well, and I would even point out that a lot of the things that people mention are ways that these technologies could potentially be used nefariously. Uh, just, well, okay, not like mind control chips, but
yeah,
the idea of a government surreptitiously using implantable technology to do bad things is a bad thing.
right.
And like with this, before we implemented anything like this, we would want to put lots of safeguards in. We would want to make sure that it was good because, and we would want to decide if the safeguards do they compromise the effort by so much it's not worth it, or are the safeguards more effort than solving the problem a different way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are real concerns that need to be addressed if something like this is going to be implemented. Not saying that it is,
Yeah,
not saying that it's on the horizon. It's just that yes, the privacy concerns are real.
having an easily accessible database by which you could prove your identity could really help a lot of communities. It could help us with uh, everything from voting to making sure people get services to making sure that people don't end up on the street and aren't left on the street to like making to checking health records to eliminating hospital error. I mean, there's a lot of potential positives, but they could also potentially be used to uh, track people, and if that information wasn't secure, a lot of bad things could be done with it. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
the
can it?
concerns are legitimate,
Yes.
but that's why it's still in the think tank stage, and they're just proposed as potential solutions.
Right. We're not there yet. Well, so, I mean, how feasible is this, though? I mean, like, when we're talking about the idea of, I mean, obviously there's a big difference between implanting a microchip that controls behavior, that transmits messages into the human brain and makes people do involuntary actions and behaviors, and an injectable chip that just tracks your movement or location or identifies you in some way. Two very different things.
Yo, God, goodness, yes. So if that's a layup to my portion, uh,
You caught on very
then
well to that.
good. All right. Then there are some things that I think we should. Some stuff I want to look at up front.
Yeah.
Is my focus when I was looking into this was about, was this possible by like pretending it's a vaccine and using that as a delivery?
Mm-hmm.
There do exist implantable technologies.
Yes.
It is absolutely true that the United States and many other governments have in the past experimented on their own citizens. And like,
Yeah, that's true.
I do not find the idea that the CIA would snatch up a homeless man and chip him to be like, I don't think the moral problems with that are not what would prevent the CIA from doing.
No, no,
Um,
morality is not something that I
yeah,
have ever accused any intelligence agencies or law enforcement agencies of having.
but there would be the question of why bother? Because what could these implantable technologies actually accomplish? Um,
What you don't
just
want to have a giant army of homeless zombies to take on the
well,
Kremlin?
you couldn't make them zombies, even if I did think that that was a potentially useful idea. Um, is the thing. There's like, I guess you could implant. Okay, again, we're not talking delivery vehicle and sort of outside the thing. I guess you could like implant someone with an internal EEG to shock their brain or something,
Hmm.
but all you could really do is make people spasm and fall down.
It's like a
Like,
taser inside your brain.
yeah,
That,
yeah, like a taser in your brain.
fuck, that's
Uh,
awful.
yeah. But also, that's you're talking for those sorts of technologies. Anything beyond that, you're talking about major surgery,
Hmm.
um, and not like drive up to Walgreens and get a vaccine. Being put under and having surgery. And again, most of that isn't even possible anyway. The idea of an implantable transmitter, we know it's a thing, as you pointed out. It's done in an acoustic kitty. But an
Which is a great
implantable
name for a band, by the
transmitter
way.
that a doctor can't find? No,
Hmm. Yeah,
not a thing.
not a thing.
Um, and when we look at the currently available, I sort of focus mainly around sort of the concept of tracking, right?
Mm.
That's the main thing we can do with any sort of implantable technology. And it falls kind of into two categories, um, active and passive tracking.
Okay.
Uh, Active tracking is providing a location, it is sending information out to be received, whereas passive tracking is something that would be looked for and potentially accessed, but it's not actively sending out a signal. Um, so when we talk about like, well, firstly, for active tracking, we could look at like GPS or something like that, something that would send out a location signal.
Okay.
Um, well, A, there do not exist commercially available implantable GPS trackers.
Yeah.
That's not a thing that exists.
They're
Uh,
big.
the smallest commercially available GPS trackers are um, like about the diameter of a quarter wide and maybe a 2.5 inches tall. Um, and one like that can take like two AAAs. It'll ping its location like once a day, and it can work for about a year on two AAAs. I think
Okay.
two or somewhere around that range. Um, but they're not small. They can be like a watch, size of a watch or something like that. But GPS trackers are not tiny. In fact, the smallest GPS chip currently publicly known to exist, at least as of, was one I found in 2015.
Hmm.
Um, it was in like a product launch about it. It is 4.1 millimeters by 4.1 millimeters by 2.1 millimeters.
Wow.
That's pretty
That's
tiny.
that's pretty small. Yeah.
It's remarkably tiny. Now, thing about it
Okay.
is that is just the GPS chip.
Okay.
That is not the antenna.
Oh.
That is not the power source.
Yeesh.
That is not everything that connects that together. That is not the casing, like a glass casing that would allow that to go under the skin,
Wow.
like those trackers you mentioned,
Yeah.
without being turning into a tumor, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeesh. Which that does happen
neat.
too, by the way. It's not a. It was a significant percentage of animals. I don't know why I ended up researching a bunch of stuff about animals getting implanted with chips, but it's a common thing we do with pets. But
Well,
like,
it's also important for this research is
yeah,
can you really implant electronics in things? And the answer to that question is mostly not really.
yeah. Well, not complicated technology anyway. It seems.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
they can get
but
tumors.
yeah, so uh, needles that are gauged for vaccines range from a 22 to a 25 gauge.
That's
The internal diameter of those needles ranges from 0.168 to 0.25 millimeters.
millimeters. Okay,
Yes.
that sounds
Um,
small, but I'm terrified that that might actually be kind of big.
I mean, it is very small. The GPS chip we mentioned, again, just the chip, no power source, no antenna, is 4.1 millimeters by 4.1 millimeters by 2.
Yeah.
It is hundreds of times too large to fit in a needle.
Ah.
Um,
Phew.
Also, I think, I mean, if we're talking about using the vaccine as as a surreptitious delivery mechanism for a microchip, then it needs to still be like a normal vaccine because there will be hundreds of thousands of health workers involved in delivering this vaccine.
Ooh.
And
That's
right,
something.
I mean
Yeah, that's something I didn't think about.
yeah, so like it can't unless they are all involved or a significant portion of just regular like the lady at Walgreens who gives you your flu shot.
She's in on it,
You'll need
Carl.
yeah, I mean
She's
unless
part of the
they're in
deep
on it, this
state.
thing has to be like a normal vaccine. Um, or that was the assumption I would operate under, unless you're willing to, again, to go into some sort of just massive conspiracy that's just.
I mean, you start looking at these conspiracies under a critical lens, and they start becoming so unfeasible just because of the sheer amount of people that are involved, right? That would have to be
Yeah.
involved in order to execute something like this on a scale that is what's being professed in these.
Useful at
Yeah,
all. Yeah.
exactly.
So GPS chip definitely not fitting in a needle. Even if that one chip could, even if you could somehow get a bunch of people to use the thing like an injector to put capsules under the skin that somehow no one noticed, you're still talking about a capsule that's like the size of a vitamin. And
The-
no,
the-
that's just not going to fit. In fact, even still, this GPS tiny chip actually has a signal strength of only negative 163 decibels per millimeter, I think. I don't know. Negative D, lowercase d, capital B, lowercase m. Um, and it needs to be at negative 40 to negative 150 to even be acquired actively.
Oof.
So even if you could use this chip, which is hundreds of times too large to fit through the needle, even if you could power it and have an antenna, it's still not an it still could only ping out its location. It could not be actively picked up by satellites. It would have to send a location out. And even if you could do that, A AAA battery has about a 1000 milliamp capacity,
Okay.
right? So if we look at those commercially available trackers that can ping their data once a day on two in about a year, that's still only 365 pings. And those tiny, 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 tiny little uh, like hearing aid batteries have a capacity in the tens of amps,
Oh,
milliamps.
not a lot of power.
Yeah, so and those would still be too big.
Yeesh. And can we just talk for a second how just freaky terrifying a needle that's large enough to inject a chip like that under your skin would be? Good God.
Yeah, it'd have an opening bigger than a ball, like way bigger than a ballpoint pen.
That's like some
You're talking
Dr.
about like
Mario shit, right?
yeah, this is like an opening. I don't even have anything on my desk. I don't know the size of the hole you plug your headphones into.
Oh,
Minimum, that'd be the opening. Like
terrifying. Terrifying. I would not want to
just
get stabbed with that.
no,
No.
yeah, like. And in fact, a GPS tracker is still probably gonna be more like an echinacea pill or something, like the end of a pinky.
Well,
Like these things
too
are
big.
not going to be small. Not that they couldn't exist, they just would be small and they wouldn't have a lot of power. I did find an article that talked about an ingestible GPS tracker,
Mm-hmm.
but it would only work for about 72 hours. It was supposedly small enough that you could like put it in someone's food. Um, but it would only last about 72 hours. I don't know if that was because it went through the person or because that's all the power would last, but
Mm.
like
I mean, at some point, you're going to pass that.
yeah, it's still way too big to put in the bloodstream.
So, you're telling me that it's going to be real tough for somebody to inject you with a tracking vaccine using current technology without you knowing that it happened. At least
For
not while you're.
active tracking.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just
Like, you'd have a pretty good
not
idea that somebody was
yeah,
doing
it's
this to you.
there is no way that health workers wouldn't notice.
Right.
So you'd need all of them involved because you're not even talking really about a vaccine looking needle anymore. This is more
No.
of an injection device that injects something the size of a pill. Um, Even then, it maybe work for a few months before it ran out of power.
So, like, how good is
Um,
that? You just gonna keep going back to the vaccine store and just keep re-upping on your
yeah.
vaccines so you can
Well,
get more.
and vaccines go into your veins, and if this went into your veins, it would kill you.
Do they, or are they intermuscular? I
Good
didn't.
point.
I didn't think they were
I
intravenous.
think it depends. Probably intermuscular a lot of the time.
I think so. I don't think you need to inject vaccines
Um,
into the vein, but that's
but
yeah,
nonetheless, large foreign body. Got to be careful where you put that.
that's true. Very true.
Um, but that does bring us to passive tracking.
Hmm.
Now, for passive tracking, I focus mainly around RFID chips.
Okay.
But the thing that's important to remember about those is they've not come along that far from from when the guy first injected himself in 1998 with one that could carry a 16-digit code.
Yeah.
The smallest ones right now have about a 38-digit code memory.
Okay.
And now 38 digits is a lot of digits. That's more than enough digits necessary to track the US population or the entire planet. I mean, it's 10 to the 38 potential combinations.
Like if everybody had a
Um,
unique number.
oh, and then some.
Okay.
Yeah, like numbers would not be a limitation.
Okay.
Um,
What number?
but
What number would you be, Carl?
42.
That's a good number to pick.
Yeah. Uh, the but the there's still problems there, right? Because again, an RFID is a passive tracking. It is you have to look for it, so it has to be in range of a locator device of some kind that pings the RFID chip
Okay.
to get a response. Then all that does is just get the code back, which then would reference a database. Not a problem in with modern computing technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that could easily be accomplished by like a smartphone.
Sure.
But that's just, I mean, that's all it would do. And then when we look at the ranges, there are RFID chips with ranges up to like 100 meters. They're big though. Those are
Hmm.
like the tile tags that you can buy to
Oh,
put on your stuff.
yeah.
The things with 100-meter range are stuff that's used to like track rail cars and things like that. I mean, these
Okay.
are I didn't even bother looking up the size because like it's like the commercially available ones. And they're the size of like the tile tracking chips. We're talking something that's inches by inches. That's not getting implanted under your skin anyway, and it's certainly not coming through a needle.
Oh, and I mean, and this is passive, right? These don't have a power source. They don't require a power source in order to
Yeah,
work.
yeah. You just have to come within 100 meters of something that pings it and it gets the code.
Got it. So they don't transmit. They just there. Hey, I'm a tracker. Little ID tag. I got a code
Yeah,
on me. If you read me, I'll tell you what
radio.
I am.
Yeah,
All right.
radio frequency ID. So when it picks up the signal, it kind of bounces a signal back,
Okay.
right? Um, Very low power, but practically outside of super ideal conditions like a rail yard where they have specifically designed open air and pass things through very specific points to get sensed where it's 100 meters, the practical range on large RFID chips is a lot closer to 10 meters.
It's
um,
pretty close.
but things change a lot when the scale gets smaller. Now, the smallest RFID chip is 0.06 millimeters by 0.06 millimeters.
Okay.
And the keep in mind the barrel on a needle 0.168 to 0.25, but
Yeah.
it's 0.4 millimeters thick.
Oh. Okay.
So
Still not going
uh
through
yeah,
a.
twice the widest needle's width. And in this case, that is an RFID chip. So it does still need some kind of an internal or external antenna.
Okay.
Um, and that is not a chip that is designed to exist inside of a biological system.
Mm.
Um, so
No sort of
you're gonna
glass
need,
housing. No
yeah,
way to actually implant it
yeah,
and keep it there without
yeah,
irritating the skin or the body rejecting.
or breaking the chip.
Ah, yeah. Also fair.
Yeah. So again, we're then increase the size further to put some kind of a casing around it. Already too big for a needle. But there is the other problem there too is that those chips, even with an external antenna, have a range that's closer with an external antenna have a range of about 25 to 30 centimeters,
That's you gotta be real close for that.
about a foot.
Yeesh.
Uh, and then without an external antenna, the range is measured in millimeters.
So you would need to have some kind of handheld device very, very close. Say if it was possible that somebody actually had this implanted in their body in order for it to be read, it's not like you could track them from far away. You'd have to be just right up all in their business.
Yeah, the maximum of about a foot away, more likely up against the skin where the tracking device is.
So somebody again
Um,
probably would notice.
but there is an interesting thing too I found called powdered RFID chips. And they're kind of like this, it's this powdered swarm.
Huh.
They're 0.05 millimeters by 0.05 millimeters by 0.005 millimeters.
Okay. Oh wow.
This is microscopic
It's
things.
tiny.
They can be like mixed into ink or brushed into fabric. Um, they could potentially be sprayed over a crowd, I guess.
Really?
Um, Yeah, that's a possibility, but it'd be like a store could use them and tag clothes, and then if you walk through a sensor in a doorway, potentially pick them up because when concentrated in a specific area, they can have around that 1 foot receiver range. Um,
Interesting.
However, as the chips are individually, their range is in the micrometers,
Oof.
not even micrometers.
So very, very
And
tiny.
most little tiny chips have a range that's again measured in millimeters. It's only this one chip with an external antenna that can get to about a foot. Um, Now, the thing too is that powder is again designed to be external. It's designed to be on something, um, inside of something, or spread out. Is that again? That's where that range starts to be measured in micrometers. So there, you're absolutely on the skin
Yeah.
to be able to pick it up, essentially touching. Um, the So size wise, possible but not, they're not for internal. And then the smallest RFID tags that are intended to be used internally wouldn't fit in a needle.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Huh.
So you either have all health workers involved because they would realize this is not a normal vaccination procedure.
Yeah, this doesn't this is seeming less and less plausible by the minute.
Or, let's, even if we said, okay, maybe there is some, 'cause these the powdered ones, what I was reading in 2018, as they have been used to like tag. There was an event in Germany that had 6 million attendees, and they reported a 0.001% ticket fraud.
Wow.
So they used it for like validating tickets,
Oh, wow.
and print, like, it's the best watermark in the world,
Yeah.
basically. Um,
Wow.
and Scientists in 28, at least as early as 2018, had been working on RFID chips that could be embedded within cell walls. And they had in 2018 successfully implanted a mouse, um,
Oh,
to track cancer cells.
cancer's it's like
Yeah.
biological cells. I thought you were talking about prison cells there for a second.
Oh
I was
no,
like, that
like
doesn't seem hard.
biological cells walls.
Oh
These things are
man.
very tiny. But these are the ones that have the range in micrometers. So
Yeah,
you have to be inside a
inside the
device
device
to
oh
to be
man.
able to check them. And that is not, again, not really, that would so drastically change the vaccination procedure.
Oh,
And there is no indication that this is live, and the range is measured again in millimeters. But even if you could implant these things, even if that technology had become widespread and we just didn't know about it, even if they could legitimately fit in a normal vaccination syringe without people noticing that that was happening. And even if you could avoid that, most of these devices would have to be large enough that they'd be noticed by a doctor when lesions or something started to form around them.
yeah.
And you would then need all of the medical community to be involved, not just the people who administered the vaccine. You still have the range issue. We're talking about something between millimeters and a foot. And as you pointed, that would mean they'd have to be all up in your business to track you with it. Um, you would have to have the government or the globalists or the shadowy deep state organization of your choice would have needed to implant sensors in like every public doorway. Even just sitting in your car, you'd be too far away for the roadway to pick it up. This couldn't be something that was in traffic cams or anything like that because they'd just be too far away. And as soon as you left any area that had these things in doorways, they just wouldn't know where you were, unless they also somehow got it into your home doorway. Uh, or, I guess, one thing, there is a device that can read RFID chips that we keep on us at about all times. There's our smartphones, right?
Wait.
Um,
Wait. Are you telling me that the government could track me
yeah,
with my smartphone?
exactly. So, like,
Oh my
even if
god.
they could implant us with these tags, the through the normal vaccination process, the ones that are that size are so small that the ranges would be so small that it just wouldn't be practical to scan or track them, not without massive checkpoint efforts and like people scanning you with devices, unless they did it through your cell phone, which you keep on you, but it already communicates way more information than a 38-digit code possibly could that they can already tie to you because we have to give our social security number when we get a credit check to get a cell phone. It um so yeah, like it's just I mentioned to you earlier that I sort of started from, okay, well, I'm going to see what could be implanted with current technology, and then I'll research what claims are being made about what that technology can do, and I'll see if it can do it. And I didn't really have to get past that initial stage because
It
technology that would be implantable through the vaccination process just
it
isn't
doesn't
really a
it
thing.
doesn't exist. Yeah, it
Yeah.
really doesn't.
And even if the closest thing to plausible that I could find with these RFIDs that are not really for internal usage, other than that cell wall one, which is in extremely nascent stages, then have ranges so short that the conspiracy would have to exponentially grow to like every home repair guy on the planet who ever could come look at that door.
Just
Uh,
not. It's just so
yeah,
infeasible that it just doesn't. It doesn't make
especially
sense.
we carry a smartphone that has a high definition camera and a microphone and GPS
Oh,
and pings all of the devices around it and sits on our home networks, which also the government could potentially access and often does.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and that all of our communication filters through. Like, not only is it technologically infeasible, not only does that mean the technological limitations would be such that they would just literally be tracking at most your position,
Hmm.
which can tell you a lot about a person,
Sure.
and then the ranges make that not feasible, but like most people carry something that provides way more information than this chip ever possibly could
Yeah.
voluntarily. In fact, we pay for the privilege.
Right. We pay for the privilege. This is what really when I see this conspiracy pop up about, oh, they're gonna inject us with, they're gonna inject us with these tracking chips. They're trying to control us. It's like this is
Like and subscribe my YouTube video you're watching on the supercomputer you keep in your pocket
yeah,
most of the
you're
time.
literally tweeting out this nonsense from a device that can and sometimes I'm not going to say that one person, but is used to track people. It
Yeah.
absolutely is. It's not. This is not a. That's not a conspiracy theory. That is a proven fact. Uh,
It's that's a feature.
yes, it's
Being able to track your family members and share your location is a feature I can enable in Google when I'm coming to see you.
100%. Like this is it's. I want to just like reach out to every single one of these people that I see talking about this conspiracy theory and go, okay, talk about your cell phone for just describe to me what it does and describe to me how once you've done that, describe to me how that's not a better tool for tracking you than some sort of tiny magical device that can't and does not exist.
Yeah. And that would require, again, a conspiracy measuring in minimum
Right.
hundreds of thousands of people to install the infrastructure to have the scanners, to run the checkpoints, to give the vaccines that just clearly wouldn't be like normal vaccines. Doctors to cut, like, just randomly cover up when people start developing lesions because of the size of these devices.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
You
yeah,
need,
it's
yeah, you need Dr. Mario out there with that giant fucking syringe injecting
yeah,
just pill size. I mean it's yeah. It is
yeah.
it can be hard sometimes to look at these conspiracy theories through a critical lens because it doesn't take very long to get to the point of like this absolutely falls apart under just the slightest amount of scrutiny.
It's also frustrating because, and something that you and I have talked about a lot recently just together, but this is yet another thing where there are real legitimate concerns
Yes.
about our privacy, our
Yes.
information security, our bodily autonomy, our there's all sorts of like real things. There are real organizations like my internet provider and cell phone company that package and sell my data and I have no access to it. And my options are either don't participate in modern society or be tracked.
Yep.
And these are problems.
Yes.
And these crazy conspiracies are taking potential focus and resources away from that because these people are clearly concerned about these issues.
Right. Yeah,
And
obviously.
instead of on focusing on things like net neutrality to prevent, people from manipulating our traffic or privacy concerns or some sort of US version of the GDPR, they're worried that someone's injecting them with science fiction.
Yeah. It's it's that refusal to look at the issue from a logical perspective and actually argue for the actual thing that is happening. You're
Yeah.
arguing a straw man, a fantasy, a fiction that it might be fun to like. I don't know. I guess I can't get myself in the head of a conspiracy theorist person. Like I don't understand how that's fun. I don't understand. I mean, I guess maybe they don't think it's fun. Maybe it is something that they're scared of. But I also don't understand. Like, if you thought about this at all, how could you be scared about that when there are other things that you should be concerned about that are real and are happening?
Yeah, how are you scared about that when you're carrying a cell phone?
Yeah.
How are you scared about that when, we know that our conversations are being monitored without a warrant?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
It's like if you and obviously the obfuscating thing that you could respond back to that would be, well, they've got super fancy technology that we don't even know about, that is just super. And you know what, honestly, frankly, I'm sure that there is technology out there that we don't know about, that is developed in secret, or government private partnerships.
we didn't find out about. I looked up Acousticat while you were
Yeah,
Acousticitty while you were talking about it. We didn't find out about it until a declassification in 2001. I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah. So
and yeah, I mean, like too, like we said, there's RFID chips in cell walls.
mhm,
So, and that was in
that's
2018.
amazing.
Now, the nature of the research into these sorts of things is that it doesn't just drop off the face of the earth because there's hundreds and thousands of people trying to make RFID chips smaller. Well,
Right.
not hundreds and thousands of people. That's a vast over exaggeration. But it is a major engineering field to miniaturize things.
Sure.
So, unless the government is many, 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 many generations past, and there are usually a few
Yeah.
past what we know exists, it's possible there are a few. But there's no way they also increased a 4 millimeter transmission range to 100 meters.
No.
Like at the point and size we're talking about on these chips, we're also running into like the limitations of physics
Right.
to like how wide and big the device is going to affect from how far away it can get a signal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You can't fight physics.
yeah, it's like people worried about satellites being able to like read a quarter from space. Like physics says no.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like
Sorry. Yeah.
the width of the wave eventually becomes a problem.
Hmm.
Um, and so like it like and then too the entire logistics around that, the length, like the transmission, like we were saying, the infrastructure required to track people that way is such a gigantic investment when like the civilian sector already built one.
Right. And we're already using it to sell you ads.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not only does it exist, it's been monetized already.
Yeah. I it
So
just yeah. It's just another one of those crazy things that's going around out there that I struggle to wrap my head around.
yeah,
And I do think, as we talked about earlier, that this is tied into um especially what we're all dealing with right now with our current pandemic, and this rise of anti-vax narratives and mindset that's been kind of perpetrated by social media and perpetuated out into the mainstream, such that, like, we have people that are questioning medical science and are questioning medical authority.
well, and when you have a government that has lied I mean, when you
Right.
have a government that has experimented on people and creatures, when you have a government that has and will continue to lie about these things, like, and as you saw, throughout the Cold War and the rise of modern communications infrastructure producing a rise of modern propaganda, uh, and the distrust, much of it deserved, that
Hmm.
grows, and just it provides a fertile ground for these things. But like you said, you want these people to take a step back and be like, no, nope, nope, nope.
Yeah.
Come up with a different conspiracy about the vaccine, because this one doesn't make sense, and there are easier and cheaper and easier to hide ways to implement this thing you're worried about.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think too, until the government starts, and well, good luck on this, but until the government starts actually working for people and being proving that it's a trustworthy entity, that it's an organization
No.
deserving of our trust, and that it is looking out for us. I mean, we're gonna keep pushing these statistics, or these,
I mean,
excuse
at
me.
least maybe come January, February of next year, it'll stop actively working against us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess actively working against us, yeah, maybe. I have high hopes, I guess, but I guess they're not that high. I think I have measured expectations.
Appropriately so.
Yeah.
We're not 18 anymore.
No, no, we're not. And conspiracies are just not as much fun as they used to be.
I don't know, there's still quite a lot of fun.
They are, but not when it has to
Uh,
do with like it's literally life and death. Like now we
yeah.
have a COVID vaccine that's gonna be that we got two of them that are have very promising trial results that could be out
Yeah.
on the market next year, and once they're past FDA approval and they're proven to be safe and effective, I will gladly take one as soon
Yeah.
as I can get one. It might be a whole nother year before the supply chain can catch up, but um, yeah. But there are people out there now that are going to refuse to do it, and there's people out there that could greatly benefit from it that are going to listen to the people that are telling them that they should be afraid of it, and that is where this stops being funny to me.
Yeah. Well, and like for herd immunity, I don't know what it is for COVID, but I think you need above a 90% vaccination rate.
It's a lot. So, and good luck. I
Yeah.
mean, getting the logistics to get 90% of the population vaccinated. It'll take at least a year, if not more, um, to get enough to even cover our vulnerable populations. I mean, these companies are talking about having millions of doses, a couple millions of doses ready by next year. That's just not enough. Um,
Yeah, that's one of those numbers that, when you first hear it, it sounds like a lot,
yeah,
but there's 327 million people just in the United States.
right. There's a lot
And
of us. It's a much bigger number. So
yeah,
yeah,
the difference between 2 million vaccines and the number of people on the planet is roughly the number of people on the planet.
yep, yeah. That's fair. So I don't know, buddy. I think that we've beaten that one up pretty good. Anybody that's listening to
Yeah.
this that thinks that maybe Bill Gates is trying to inject you with a tracking vaccine, stop,
Yeah.
stop it.
Yeah. So, to both of the people listening, by that I mean future Michael and Carl.
Yes, yes, yeah, I know. Hey, you never know, buddy. Yeah, we may make something out of this yet.
I don't know, Michael. I think because it hasn't happened before we've published our second podcast, we should just give up.
We're fucking failures. We were before we started this podcast, but no, I'm just kidding. We're great.
Oh, FYI, Mayo Clinic estimates that roughly. Uh, oh, no, never mind. That's for. So, for natural herd immunity, they estimate roughly 70% of the planet would need to get COVID 19. So,
Oh,
1 to 4% of 70% of the planet would have
Jesus.
to die.
Wow. That's just awful. Yeah, you want to talk about worrying about population control, and you want to talk about,
Why you
genocides.
can't wear a fucking
You can't
mask.
wear. Oh, ugh, makes me mad. But anyway, I feel like we've beaten this one pretty well to death at this point.
53 million people.
That's how many people would have to die, huh?
Yep,
Statistically.
yep, yep. Okay.
Eesh.
Sorry. I just
No,
wanted
that's
to
a
do
lot.
that
No,
one.
we
Yeah.
needed that number. That's important.
Yeah.
That's important. But you have any last thoughts?
No. I'm looking forward to whatever conspiracy theory we decide to look into next. I gotta say, looking into these, I don't know. I am always been fascinated with implantable technologies, and I think cyborgs are pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
agreed. Cyborgs are
yeah,
cool. We're a pro cyborg podcast.
yeah. Not anti-cyborg here.
No, not at all. All cyborgs are welcome. Well, I guess my final thoughts are anybody listening to this, if it's
Please
still
get the vaccine once it's approved and available.
yes, if it's still a pandemic, wear a mask, wash your goddamn hands, and social distance. Do
Yeah,
the
just stand
basic.
6 feet apart,
Yeah,
guys.
do the bare
Yeah.
minimum. All right, we're all out here suffering along with you. We're all doing
Don't
it.
go to concerts
Yeah, don't be an asshole. Stop COVID.
or inauguration, or no.
No, no.
Sorry,
I
don't
know.
go there.
I know where you were
Yeah.
going, but all right.
Election day parties in the White House. Oh,
Ugh,
excuse me.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. I think the next administration will be a little more constrained in those.
I'm hoping for fewer super spreader events to be held by my tax dollar.
Yeah. Woof. All right, buddy. Well, let's do this again next week, huh?
Indeed.
All right.
So yeah, talk to you later, and everybody else too.
Everybody else listening, have a good night. Take care of each other.